present all the different budgets, the original and final. But what that means is you had an original budget. You had expectations going into the year of what things would be. But then things changed. Your enrollment was a little bit less. You had to hire an extra person because of X, Y, and Z. So as the year goes along, there's things that change, so the budget can't be set fast. So if it's a big change, you might revise the budget, which in this case you did. You had a different enrollment, there was some different hiring. So the board voted to do an overall revised budget, vote on that. That became the governing working document. But something we, a lot of people might not understand is a budget is a fluid working document. So if you have $20,000 in your line item for maintenance, and your HVAC unit blows, and that's going to be $5,000, and that wasn't in your budget, well, you're not going to replace the HVAC unit. You would maybe bring it to the board for a vote, or you may just say, okay, that's in my line item, and I'm going to explain the variance on my monthly budget to actual. So we look at this as a guideline and a working document, but not a steadfast, hold tight, and principle and rule. You can sometimes, we've seen boards and management get trapped in that and then not replace that HVAC unit because they don't participate.
And there are approaches to creating a budget. I think a lot of times organizations will start with last year's budget and then just tweak it going forward. And I heard a really interesting speech once at a conference I was at on fraud. And this individual, so in their IT department, this individual had created a fictitious vendor, and they were purchasing computers and paying his brother. So he was inflating his budget, buying things that were not authorized, but no one was really maintaining that and understanding those controls. So he was able to spend that money. They came to year 2, look at the budget. He overspent the budget, so they said, well, we might as well up the budget because obviously we need more in our IT budget. So because there were no controls in place along the line, he got a raise every year in order to commit more fraud. I thought that was really interesting. So I think my point is when you're going to create a budget, make sure you're doing it with your eyes wide open, that you're not just taking last year's and building off of that, because some things might change and you want to think really critically about some of those things. It's very extreme. I don't think anything like that is going on, but an example of what could happen.
And I think that's a good point to highlight that, by looking at it a few times throughout the year, your original, where you're at, and looking at it critically and maybe even revising it, that means you're putting more attention on it. So you might pick up on those things more, or asking about certain line items where those funds have gone and what they're spent on. Might be helpful. So a few other highlights on this slide was that your contributions, I wanted to highlight that the original budget was $69,000, it went up to $87,000, and the actual amounts were $140,000. And that looks a little bit different, possibly than what some people were looking at throughout the year, because this number includes what we call in-kind contributions. And what that means is someone didn't write a check to the school and hand it for deposit. They paid for something on behalf of the school, whether it be goods or services. And so I mentioned the legal fees. So a major donor actually paid for most of those legal fees on behalf of the school. But one thing to note is if those legal fees weren't incurred, the donor probably would have made a check contribution anyway to the school. So it was kind of in line there. The other piece is that the donor's choose total is in here. So the school had really, really great success using donors choose this year. So there was actually about $21,000 of funds raised through donors choose projects. And so those are reflected here in the financial statements as in-kind contributions, because the way donors choose works is that you get the stuff, not the cash. And $13,000 of that was capital items, so items that end up on your balance sheet and depreciated because they're larger ticket items that are going to last for many years at the school. So that was really great. And then one thing I also had to highlight, so we had a question about that, is there was some special education reimbursement that wasn't budgeted for, and that's actually from the sending school districts. And correct me if I'm not understanding this, but when a student comes to the school and needs special ed services, the sending district provides that for them and then reimburses it in a lot of cases. So there was more services given this year, and the school was able to get reimbursed for those funds, so that is what that is. And that one I'd say is pretty hard to budget because you don't know what your student population is gonna look like in all of the services that are going to be needed. Onto the expenditure side, so that was revenues and this is expenses, and this is taken from the statement of budgetary comparison in the financial statement, an excerpt. So the salaries was about $44,000 under budget, and that was basically because the salaries are conservative estimate and the actual hiring plan. There was natural turnover, so that salaries were a little bit lower than some of the teachers and versus longer tenure teachers. So that was a good budget pickup, and I think that's something to look at. Is it's always a moving target. You know, if enrollment's different, if you have to offer another class, if you can't find a Spanish teacher, you might have to pay them more. Another piece to highlight is the rent and related utilities. You were over budget there, and that was really related to the extreme cold during the current year, so you had higher gas and electricity bills. And so again, that's something you can't budget for. You don't know what's going to be negative for, and that you'll have to run those longer. And then lastly, I want to highlight the line item for professional fees, that it was about $63,000 over budget, but as I've said, those have been the legal fees, and I point out that if legal fees weren't incurred, you'd actually broken even on your budget and come very close to the overall budgeted number, and we consider those kind of non-recurring expenses of the school. And then very lastly, depreciation. You'll notice that there's no line item in the budget, and that's because the school has really been more focused on cash flow budgeting versus, you know, true accrual basis accounting in the startup. And so what I talked to the business manager about doing is in the next revised budget, adding that depreciation item. Now that you've grown, your cash flow isn't as tight, still tight, but not as tight, and there's a little bit less of a focus on that as you mature, bringing that budget more into line with what the final financial statements look like.
And we track that information, so it's a number we can provide to you for the upcoming year that will help make it easy to budget. So some of the things we're required to report to you in writing have to do with your internal controls. So if there was a material weakness or a significant deficiency in the internal controls of the organization, we're required to report that in writing. You'll have a separate letter. The third category here, control deficiencies, we consider to be more best practices. That is an internal document, so if someone was to ask you for your audit report and any other correspondence from the audit firm, it's an internal document generally. I know we're in a public forum, so it works a little bit different here. So just know that the differences here, you can read the definitions. So I think that we have one comment that we've had since the beginning, and probably 90% of our clients receive this comment, and this is a material weakness for the inability to prepare fully compliant GAAP financial statements. So this is a really high level for, you know, it's the same requirement for a really small nonprofit to a really large for-profit company. It's a high level. We have problems with it sometimes. So this is something that I would take with a grain of salt, but something that we're working towards educating the board, educating all of you so that you're informed readers of the financials, not necessarily preparers.
And I'd like to point out that it's specifically too with the disclosures. So even if the budget to actual, the basic financial statements can all be prepared with GAAP compliance, it also includes all of those disclosures and new GASB requirements that come out. And so it's a really, really high level to be able to do that.
So other required communications, most of these are things that we have to communicate with you if we have them, but we don't, and we won't. But I will point out that if you do use the audited financial statements in some sort of a published document, annual report, something like that, that we get a chance to look at the materials first before it goes to press. Sometimes it's manipulated in a way that doesn't make a lot of sense. And I've actually had one instance where the people at the printing company messed up the information. So it was fine when it left, and then it went to the printing company, so we had to do all this back checking. So that's the only caveat I would say here. If you go to the next page, if there was any new accounting principles that impacted your financials, we talk about that. If there was any disagreements or alternative treatment, so sometimes we have options on how to record certain items, and if there was a second opinion or some discussions that we had, we would talk about that. And then lastly, there was no discussion prior to retention, so nobody came to us and said, sure, you can do the audit for another year as long as we get a clean opinion. And we're required to be independent, so we couldn't do that. So we go on to the next.
Oh, that's the last one?
Yeah. So that's a big audit in a little nutshell. So, you guys have questions?
Any questions from the board?
I want to, well, after the presentation, I want to mention the questions that we heard from the public comments, but I think that they may be misdirected. Maybe don't really fit the audit as much as maybe a treasurer's report or something in the future. But that was the question about identifying what the pre-reduced less money, sped money, and the contract with sped 750 was about. And I don't know that you're going to necessarily know those answers based on the audit.
And I would say probably.
No, but that was one of the areas that I thought that would be a great unpredictability procedure for next year. So maybe we'll do some extra work around that. That wouldn't fall under the testing that we did in the commission.
Thank you for the answer, and because I'm curious about the questions myself, we'll get the information brought forward more from our own. Other questions by members of the board of the auditors?
Wonderful amazing. This is incredibly professional, but I know from my conversations with Kim and Daph of what you do, we're very appreciative.
I echo all those comments. Thank you very, very much. And also, thank you to our administration and our teachers and everybody that's involved in running the school for doing the good work that underlies that gives you a nice audit result. So,
It's been a good 5 years.
And I think this was the best one yet, so.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
If there are no other questions, then move on our agenda. I do want to thank them. I did briefly as I was turning around, but all of our administration and work with Kim and treasurer and Christine, everybody that's done some work that's been a part of this record. Good job. Good job. Finances. Is there a motion to accept the audit report?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Matt. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Sue. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Didn't get that part. So I'm in favor, none opposed, any abstaining, Kim is abstaining. So it is 6, 7, 0, 2, 1, 2, accept the audit report.
Because there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
6, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. The next item on our agenda, item 7, is board business. And the first item under that is the Parent Steering Committee. Date of caucus is September 24th, 2018 at 5:30. Is there more information associated with that? Or is this the announcement?
It's an announcement, and it's on.
Excellent. So looking forward to that. Item B under board business is Community Outreach Committee. And is there some updates or reports available on there?
Yes, so there's some documents on the table as well. We have a student, Allison Ouellette, who could not be here tonight due to driver's ed, the infamous driver's ed schedule. And she's worked really hard on this with Christy Scarponi. There's been we've had conversations in with the staff, with administration. It's been discussed briefly, I believe, at the board level. It was brought up. But service hours versus internships versus graduation requirement, how does this work? What does it look like? And Allison has put out a document, I believe it was yesterday or the day before, and Christy Scarponi's worked very hard with her on it. So it outlines some possible requirements of students in the building. The first piece is juniors and seniors would be exempt from any required internship or service hours, whichever path they follow, because we recognize that it can be challenging. If they do, then there would be recognition at graduation for them if they choose to go above and beyond, but this would really apply to our freshmen and sophomores, and the hours would be prorated according to their grade level right now. So Allison has broken it down with Christy, and the number they came up with was about 20 hours a year. And that can be done in a variety of ways. Christy has graciously volunteered to align various nonprofits with our students, whether that turns into a volunteer position or an internship. She's willing to look and try to find a position that aligns with their interests. So if they have a future interest, their career, maybe they want to be a teacher. Let's just take somebody who has an interest in being a teacher. They would be able to network, and possibly right here would be the perfect example. They could work underneath one of our teachers here or something in their senior year, get their hours. If they want to go into business, she can help align them with a business out there, a nonprofit, and they can shadow and see what a business manager is doing or what marketing is and what does the job really look like when you're in the field. If it's IT, Mr. Mercier would bring them into his company and take them out for the day and show them around how it works. It's a way for them to see real. So trying to be very respectful of time in the building for teachers, for administration, for the board committee, and also for the students. The hours of 20 hours a year seem to be a dual year, and it also offers them the opportunity to build their resume for college. They're also getting references by doing this for future jobs, perhaps. If they choose not to go to college and they go straight to a career, this is a reference for them to carry forward. So it's a nice networking piece. At the end, in their senior year, they would write a response. They'd have a career pathways and community engagement log. And at the end of it, they would write a 2-page paper detailing what they've done and what that meant. What did they gain from it? What is this experience that they've taken away? So I thought that was a nice piece for her to include so that we can really gauge what they're doing and how effective is this. Is it just, are we just saying go do your service hours, or are we saying let's try to find something for you that aligns with your interests and support the students in that? They can choose on here at the end, they can choose required hours for volunteer work, there's a definition, or an internship, apprenticeship. And if they have a part-time job and they can explain how that part-time job applies to future interests and what they're gaining from it, it could apply as well. So we have a number of our high school students very interested in working, a number of them have part-time jobs. So there are a number of ways to look at it. I think it's something that the board should consider. We'll post it on our website, we'll put it up there for the minutes, and see if it's something that we want to turn over to Student Services, who has very graciously offered to handle the tracking for us, and the administration for oversight.
Thank you for
It's
the
an
report.
extra piece.
Is the intent that the board would consider making a recommendation to student services tonight, or put this on the website and consider it and take it up at a future meeting? Or?
I think the idea is to have the board discuss this. Are there any thoughts on it? And what do we think? Eventually, it needs to be turned over. I think the Student Services, Ms. Scarponi and Allison are also waiting for some feedback because they have a survey that they would really like to send out that highlights the areas of interest for the students. And she wants to be able to start pulling in nonprofits to support the students if they have an interest. Again, juniors and seniors are not required to do this right now, so it's not impacting the junior and senior class, but it is an option, and there could be recognition at graduation if they choose to do this.
But, as I'm trying to get my arms around the context of how much and who, right? 20 hours of here really, for me, feels like spitting a rock across the water. You know, if you want to really be immersed in getting involved in the community, I might lobby for more time. It feels like it's a sort of a shallow attempt at understanding what goes on over here, you know, that kind of thing. Secondarily, I'm curious about where the 20 hours is so, again, for my money, minimal. why don't, can I know more about why we're attending juniors and seniors? Those are the white collar that who might be the most effective at getting something out of this kind of effort.
Well, they wouldn't be exempt forever, it's just this year and next year's class. They're not being stopped from
Right.
participating. They would be encouraged, but it won't be required because we've already outlined graduation requirements,
I see.
curriculum and so forth. The feeling was to add to that. Internally, there was some conversation and some of the students had commented that to suddenly spring this on a senior in addition to their senior project and applying to college and trying to do all these things in their senior year with no warning, that may not be appropriate. If they want to do it, they absolutely can do it, but they wouldn't be required to. And the same thing with the juniors. There was some feedback there, and when Allison drafted it, it was very clear that the juniors and seniors could be exempt. Seniors definitely should be exempt. Again, they'd be encouraged, but not required.
Not really, except to say that if we're making a commitment to community service and community involvement, again, 20 hours is a couple of weekends. It's not like we're asking them to take a part-time job. If that's the commitment that we want to make, if we don't care about being committed to a proper commitment to community service, if we want to just wave a hand at it, I don't really care. But if we want to make a concerted effort, if we really believe that community service benefits both the community and perhaps more importantly the student, this feels like a half measure.
And it's also not just community service, it's really about giving them some exposure
Sure.
in an area of interest. So it can be an internship, it can be something different.
So, you mentioned that it was nonprofits, but then you used Matt as an example.
Well, it doesn't
So,
have to.
We're just not
so,
profit,
but you
we're not
said
nonprofit.
nonprofit. You said nonprofit about 10 times.
Need to be
Well,
nonprofit.
Christie's connections for this lay in the nonprofit sector. That's really where her connections, her strength is, to bring people forward. An internship at a business, I think, is
She works
included as
for
well.
Buchanan, which is profit.
But I'm saying that the people that she has, the companies that she's talked about are primarily nonprofit, and that
Okay,
is
but
what
that isn't a
she's-
requirement.
No, not a
It could
requirement.
be go to Matt's or any business. I think that that's an important thing to add in more forcefully, because even if her contacts, and we're very grateful for her contacts, are in the nonprofit, it will grow over time. And so I might as well conceptualize it in the beginning as being not necessarily community service, but a range of experiences out in the world, which might be community service or an internship or even work for pay. So I would reconceptualize it to be broader, which doesn't mean that in the beginning it wouldn't be mostly community service. So, and I also have to second, I think, for 11th and 12th graders who aren't doing this, I agree with you that a greater commitment, a more meaningful commitment, that 20 hours is just like, having a sip of tea or something like that. But maybe for 9th and 10th graders, that's just dipping your toe in or something, and so that would be okay. And then again, conceptualize that for the older classes in the future, it would be a greater commitment. I don't know exactly how much it would be, but redo it a little
So refined.
yeah.
As a parent of young kids, I'm not sure I agree with the sense that 20 hours is light, considering all the other things that young people have going on with their own school and studies and perhaps sports or extracurriculars or all of those things, and they may be tackling their outreach 1 or 2 hours at a time over 10, 20 weeks. And for a young person, I grant you that some kids may take a much, much deeper dive, and maybe they'll be inspired to do so by getting going. But I'm not quite with you with the idea that 20 is always going to be skipping a stone across.
I see what they're trying to do, but I actually think that you really need to separate out the community outreach part versus the internship and working part, because people should be, I mean, I would look at it as, there are people, they should learn how to work in a community while also earn internship. I think they're two separate vehicles, and that both are very important. But interning isn't the same thing as work, reaching out to the community, and I think that maybe if we define a little bit more is how many hours really are part of community outreach versus internship and working.
I just wanted to ask Maureen, isn't it true that we actually required an internship in the charter?
We have a senior project, but that's not,
But the word internship is not in the charter?
I'd have to recheck that. I wanted to.
I think it could be one or the other, but which would give you half a year if you chose an internship instead of, and I think that is in there. I recall it. Do you recall that, Jen? Okay, well, I'm not
It doesn't
sure
include
either.
anything there. It's
and-
indefinite if it doesn't, stop.
So that, if it is, then that's actually a semester course. Also about, they should do community service and an internship. I would like to say that I wouldn't want everybody to be required to do community service or an internship. To me, the idea of the school is to open things up and to let students, and if they choose something one year, they might choose something another year, or they might not. But I don't think we have to make everybody into a community service person. Some people have other types of personalities, other types of interests, and I think we should allow them a broad range of choices and let them choose.
And I think that was part of, I'm sorry, that was part of the thought behind this, was to allow
Yeah,
everyone to venture out and gain some experience
yeah.
in an area that's of interest to them, and understand that when you go to work or when you go to college, things change, and you gain references, you gain some experience of what life is going to be like when you're no longer at home.
So, I agree with lots of things that have been said at the table, no question. You know, we want each student to bring their own particular talent to the table and to make this theirs, that we want them to own it, because this is part for them. I would wonder if our best use of this table might possibly be to say, let's try this as a pilot. Let's explore this with real humans. Let's put some legs to it. And we may find in the first year that 20 hours is just getting the stone. Or we may find that 20 hours when you're asking the junior to do it turns into a thing. So we want the kids to do it as freshmen and sophomores, you know, from one point of view or from another. So I know a lot of work has gone into this, and I'm thrilled that it's been done. And I would love to help them move this forward, because I think it needs to move, or we're making it spin in a circle. And I would actually suggest that we all, as a group, help to move this forward with Allison and Christie, with our ideas and our comments.
In the charter, it does say internship. I'm going to read the provisions, though. It's not a mandate. Under leadership goals in section G, so it says each year of the program, all students will fulfill the requirement of an effective leadership role in some aspect of school or community life. It goes on to quote, student government, internship, community service, independent project coordinator, a group project, etc. So that's one instance. Bear with me one moment. The next instance appears in DD, section DD. where it says TFA will connect students to a real-world experience by partnering with community, business, and public or nonprofit organizations. And then section C of that section says create internship opportunities for students with for-profit and with nonprofit organizations and local businesses.
And that's exactly what this is.
Sounds like it's well fit.
Yeah. I mean, I think Allison did a great job working on it, putting some thought into it, how to apply to all of the high school students.
One of the things I wanted to kind of point out is that we talked a little bit, it was entirely her, but she would voice some of it to me as she was working with Krista Scarponi and talking about it. One thing that popped up to me was the same thought about 20 hours. But I also, like you mentioned, I'm watching my child right now trying to balance all of her responsibilities, and she doesn't even yet have a part-time job. So she's just got the school that she takes very seriously, the committees that she's on, driver's ed keeping her up all hours of the night. And it made me think that maybe what we should do is like a 20-hour minimum, and then have, you know, like you graduate with distinction if you reach the next level. So you're encouraging them in ways that they are able to do so, to do more, rather than apply it to everyone. Because there really are students that are required, due to a variety of circumstances, to work, you know, many, many hours that may not, you know, qualify for this program. And we don't want to make it so that they can't achieve these goals too, in pathways. And there's definitely ways for us to say, whether it's cords for graduation or whatever you call this thing. I can't think of the word. Sashes, like, you know, something, notations and programs, whatever, that says this person clearly went above and beyond what's required. My other point, before I just step back into the shadows again, I really feel like we're onto something here. I feel it's very important for the students, for our community, for the name of the school out in the public, to recognize our students as people that go above and beyond. But I also don't feel comfortable tonight voting to give this up yet, because I'd like to have the opportunity to hear parent public comment next month on this.
And also some student feedback, I think, is the goal as well.
Well, and that comes with the survey, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Barbara?
Yeah, I was, listening to what Christy was saying. So instead of having 20 hours per year, as this is suggesting, a minimum requirement of hours to graduate, period, and then, you know, go from there. I actually think that works.
Two things. One, if it is in the curriculum, then it would be a semester course if you decided to do the internship or the community service, right?
I think it depends on how this is defined. I
Well,
think-
wait, but we already have the credits for it in our curriculum.
The senior project?
Yeah, well, but it isn't, a senior project is only one of the things.
Right.
It was a whole list of things. So if, let's say they choose an internship, that's a semester course, right?
As an independent study or something to that effect?
Well, it's part of the curriculum. You either do a senior project, or you do a community service thing, or you do an internship thing. The idea being that after studying leadership all these years, you go out and start practicing it, and you get credit for it as a course. Either, either of those three things, a community project, an internship, or community service experience.
I have to say, from remembering back when we were sitting at West Library and first hearing about the school, this is turning out to be far more user-friendly than I think what we were initially was suggested of. You had to write a business plan your junior year and then run it your senior year. Didn't matter if you made money or not, you were going to, as long as you could say why you made money or you didn't. That just personally freaked me out completely, but this, in my world, is a more better real life situation.
Well,
At
I'm
least
just
for my
asking though, would it be for credit experience if instead of doing a senior project, you did an internship.
That's not my interpretation of what the outreach committee did.
Okay, but,
What they're proposing, it's in addition to, it's in addition to.
You have your senior project.
And a lot of schools do that. A lot of schools do that. They say, you know, to graduate, you have to have a certain amount of service hours. That is outside of credit, that's outside of class.
well, wait a minute, but is it just service? I object to that. Well, you may all vote for it, you generally don't vote the way I want you to. I object to calling it a service hours thing.
But we're not, we're calling it, they've renamed it, so part of this would be the career pathway and community engagement, and they have options, they can do any of that.
Okay, and I like the idea of adding the leadership component to it also. And before we do vote on it, or I don't know if we're even being asked to, I'd like to see the wording of the whole thing. And to see if we can blend it in with our mission very, very clearly. And that kind of stuff.
So we could arrange a meeting for you to meet with Allison.
Well, can I just see what they have?
Yeah.
Can we all see what they
It's
have?
on the table.
Oh, it's on the
Yeah,
table?
it's somewhere.
Oh.
Okay.
I just want to put, I think Allison's work towards this project actually should count towards
Yeah.
her 20 hours.
Yes.
This is a tremendous
Well, yes.
project and undertaking coming from a student of our school.
Absolutely.
Amazing.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just, you know, if we're framing something for the whole school though,
Yeah.
and how does this other thing fit in or doesn't it? Is it a separate thing? Should we put that? Is it clear to people in our high school now that they actually can do an internship? Or do they all just think they can do a senior project?
Well, they don't have to do a senior project. If they do an internship, as part of this, it would be in addition.
No,
to-
no. In the way the charter states it, it's a senior project or an internship or community service. Not, that's the way it was intended, as the charter was written.
So what Dean Mooney read out of the charter a little while ago presented some options in terms of components of a leadership strand, but it doesn't necessarily translate that the itemized list in the charter is all made available as equal co-choices on a list.
Yes,
They
I
can
think
all
it
be-
does.
I don't think it does. I think it presents these opportunities where within the leadership strand, some things may be more prominent than others, some things may be more enforced or more reinforced than others.
I think it was an either or thing in the senior year.
I think you're onto something though, too, in the sense that this, it sounds like this will not be voted on tonight, is that?
It seems like the advice from the
All right.
folks that are developing it
Well-
says we want to hear some parent and student feedback. so-
Okay, well, in that vein, I'd ask too that the student volunteers look at the charter and see how this is a direct match. So in the feedback from the board, I'd ask that they do that as well.
But what about that other question of, can an internship be a semester course, just as a student project will be a semester course?
Well, it hasn't been yet.
But
Could it
is
be?
it in the charter that it should be an alternative?
If it's for credit, the internship would have to be looked at, the number of hours, what they're doing.
Right, but I think the charter did intend for that to be it. I do think that.
Let's look at it.
I
Let's bring
remember
it back.
when we discussed all that.
So for the purposes of getting our business done tonight, since we're not going to vote on it and we're looking to have some parent and student feedback to examine these issues about how it fits with the charter, what the charter's intent was, and certainly the question about whether these things can be brought alongside the student project and as alternatives, all of those questions can be kind of looked at, and this board can take up the question at the next meeting or whenever it's properly stewed and ready for us to consider. To have it get that public feedback, will we put that on the agenda and then we hear about it in a public comment period, or are we going to do that in a committee, or what's the sense of how that work gets done?
I think the document needs to be posted, and I think if Allison is spearheading this internally from the student side, she can reach out to students. It can become a conversation that she has with them. I think she's had it with several already. And again, this is a draft. It's student-led, so I want to be supportive of that. That takes a lot of time, and that is a leadership role actually for her. So I think we need to acknowledge that piece of it, even though it's not quite ready.
Definitely, but if we're imposing this
And
on the
ask
entire
for
student
feedback.
body, it has
So,
to be,
right.
it's not just because the student did it that we accept it totally.
No, we don't have to
now.
accept it, but I just want to acknowledge what she's done and
Yes.
understand that she does want more input. That was the whole point of the next step would have been a survey, looking for areas of interest and trying to define what people are actually looking for if this were to happen. So she's looking for feedback. It's not a done deal.
And no document related to the subject was attached to this agenda.
No, it just
All right.
arrived.
So that sounds great for next month.
Yes.
Thank you.
So no action, no further action by the board tonight, any specific guidance or anything that anybody wants to give or receive?
Does she need us to say, go ahead and start with some surveys, and do we need to say that for her to be able to move forward, or is that kind of already out there?
I don't believe it's gone out.
I don't know that any board
The survey
action
has
is being
not
needed.
gone out, I
I
think.
didn't think so.
Yeah.
Whether it's gone out or not, I don't know that the board needs to approve the survey in order for it to.
I would want her to feel empowered to do that, I guess is my point.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I don't want to stall her in what she's trying to achieve.
And I think also as a general matter, the board should be taking up some overarching guiding principles and not sort of digging into the minutia of survey. Not that it's a bad tool to have, but it's just not suited for the board to be decided. You do. Okay, so if there's no other action necessary on item number 7, the board business, item 8 is a faculty report where it indicates coming soon. So I assume that means we don't have one for tonight, correct? Okay.
I don't have anything written. Just as a general comment, it seems like we have some really great energy going on, and it seems like the teachers and the students I've noticed really good, what do I want to say, lots of ideas, lots of get up and go among certainly the students that we're seeing. I think that we started off well. I think that we negotiated challenges early, and that we had a good opening. So I'm looking forward actually to the first faculty meeting, which will allow me to sort of, talk with faculty members and engage, so that we can have some sort of a good conduit of communication here to bring back to the board.
Thank you for the report, and I was also disappointed at the results of Election Day, but thank you for your candidacy.
Thank you.
That leadership role and going out and testing out democracy a little bit. That brings us to item 9 on our agenda, which is new business. There's a ministerial task that I have on my notes for new business, and that is, at our last meeting, we deferred the approval of the June minutes based on some discussion and some concerns, and so we still have that business to take care of. I've had a chance to take a look at what our concerns were from last time, and I'm comfortable that we are on the right path if we so choose to adopt or approve those minutes. But it's appropriate for us to take that up and decide what we want to do with our June minutes. And so with that, I'll open the floor to see if there's any discussion about those minutes, and if not, if there's any action the board is willing to take on that.
Well, can you give us a little bit of a,
Yep.
what was your finding?
So a couple of things were related to that. There was a discussion about minutes in a sense that we approved the contract for our dean, and we didn't do it appropriately. And so those two things kind of raise two separate issues, one of which we discussed substantively, and one which we didn't really discuss sort of ministerially. First of all, approving the minutes of June where we did that action with the contract, approving the minutes of it doesn't actually have any legal effect with respect to approving the contract or reapproving it or whatever. All that does is say that this is a proper accounting of what we talked about in June. And so approving minutes has nothing at all to do with the actual decision to approve a contract or not. So you don't ever have to pause on approving minutes if they accurately reflect what was discussed. Second issue, what was raised was that the contract approval needed to happen in a different way in public session and be published online, having looked at 91A, the right to know law, and consulting some sources that with some appropriate knowledge on it. I'm confident that we did it appropriately, and it wasn't required that we do it in any different way than what we did. And so that's what I found is my opinion. Now that kind of borders on legal advice, and I'm not a lawyer, but I am a lawyer, but I'm not a lawyer for the board. So I'm not providing legal counsel to the board about that, but that's my opinion after having taken a deeper dive into that. So with that in mind, if you have any further questions or details about that?
With that in mind, I would like to make a motion that we accept the minutes as they were presented.
So motion to approve the June minutes as presented. Is there a second? Patty seconds. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? One abstains, two abstentions, Christie and Kim. And so those minutes are approved.
So then thank you for looking into all that stuff.
Thank you, and there's others. I didn't do all that by myself.
Okay.
So the next item on here is I wanted to have a little discussion about Matt, our former chair, who was not here at our last meeting, so we didn't get a chance to honor him and thank him for his service as the past chair. And obviously you stepped in at a great time of need for the board and for the school, and you did a great job. And I don't know if you know it because I wasn't here at the time, but I remember when you were campaigning to be the board chair, and the hats that you made with Make Our Board Great Again on them, those were great. That was key, and you did make our board great, so congratulations for that. But more than that, I wanted to establish a tradition or a precedent for us to honor our board chairs with gifts and things pretty frequently, and be generous about the expensive things, because hey, I like those kinds of traditions, so those might not be a bad thing. So what I wanted to do is, something nice like a gold watch, or like a Harley Davidson or something like that. So I talked to, I talked to Kim and Maureen, and they said no, that would not work in the budget, so we couldn't do that. Passed around the hat to all the board members, still came up a little short, came up a little short, so.
So I get this.
Well, yeah. Well, no, I thought about paying for it myself, but then I realized that your departure as chair is what, sort of opened up this seat. Now I've got to do this work, so I felt less generous after that a little bit. So no Harley, no gold watch. But we do have for you is a certificate that we prepared, and this is a special certificate because it's not just a certificate with some nice words on it, but it's actually made out of Kevlar, so if you need to deflect some more slings and arrows, you can use this for
You
that.
should probably give it to the chair before.
The next one for the next item. So this is the Founders Academy recognizes Matt Mercier as our chairman, as our 2018 chairman of the board for demonstrating exemplary service to the school. And I want to present that to you with our thanks.
That's very kind.
And that brings me to the third item that I have under new business, which is unpleasant news a little bit. And that is that our board member, Christy Scarponi, has decided that she would not be renewing her position or running for another term on our board when her term is up, which I believe is next month? This month. And she has a letter, which I'd like to read into the record, but it's here. Dear Founders Academy trustees, this is to us and to Kim from Christy. Thank you for the opportunity to serve alongside you for the past year. It's been a wonderful experience working with a board dedicated to the mission and vision of the school. As a board, we have made great progress this year. As a new family to Founders Academy and having served on many nonprofit boards, I appreciated being able to enter the community in service to the mission of the school. My daughters are thriving academically, socially, and emotionally at Founders, and I look forward to continued work on the Community Engagement and Career Pathways project in partnership with Allison Ouellette and the high school students she so impressively represents. Respectfully, Christy. So that is her letter, and I don't think that it requires any board action to accept it, but it is obviously news that I would rather not have had. And so that is the item that I have under, all the items that I have under new business. I don't have any items for a non-public session. That brings us to item 11 and last on our agenda, which is an announcement that our next meeting is October 17th, 2018 at 5:30 PM in this location. With that, it would be appropriate to entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
There is a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
A little rush to second. Matt's got the second. Barbara first, Matt second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? We are adjourned. Thank you very much,
Thank you
everybody.
very much.